Good morning. Let's see, this is Wednesday morning, January 6th. Janisa Bush, welcome this morning. Mike and Joe, good to see you this morning. Jan Akins. Daryl and Suzanne, welcome to you both this morning. Good morning, everybody. Karen Lowe, good morning. Good to see you this morning. Barbara Richardson, welcome. This morning we're continuing in our discussion about a rule of life, and we've already talked about, I've said that I have these four areas that I place under this idea of the rule of life and creating structure in my life so that I'm living intentionally. I've talked about my spiritual life and my relationships as two of the first two major components of my life. My relationships also include my emotional health and what I do to maintain health in my spiritual life and my relationships. Let's see, Wendy and Jeremy, Jim and Kathy, welcome. Sally Crocker, I saw you there. There was another name and I missed it. Sorry, guys. Steve and Andrea, welcome. So today I'm talking about the third area of my rule of life. Deanne Fine and Karen Faust, good morning. And that is my personal life. What are the areas of my personal life that I address to make sure that I'm living intentionally? My personal life is, some of the subcategories there are my physical health, like exercise and diet, my recreational pursuits and rest. I make sure I'm having balance to these things, and also my personal finances, making sure that I have my finances in order, that I'm not overextended. I'm making sure we're reducing debt. I'm have enough money in savings and putting something toward retirement. All those types of things, that I'm living intentionally. So, without talking about any one of those things, first of all, I want to talk about a general category that all these fit under the personal life category, and that is the idea of simplicity. That I have a limited amount of time, resources, passions in my life, and I have to accept those limits. And living intentionally helps me to choose the things that I add to my life. And I brought a illustrative, item here to help illustrate the point. This is just an empty jar. And this jar is a container that will illustrate my life. So I have limitations. I can only put so much in my container. And I have to choose, therefore, what fits in here. I have only so much time. I only have so many resources. I have only so much passion in me to spend. I have lots of essential obligations, and so because I can't fit everything in here, I have to be selective. And simplicity helps me to the discipline of simplicity helps me to first of all fit everything in here, and second of all helps me select what I put in this container, my life's container. So if I'm thinking about only the essential things that I want in my life, so what's the goal? First of all, the goal is that I can't exceed this. I've spent lots of years exceeding my container. It was overflowing. I had stuff all around the container. I couldn't get to everything that I needed to get to. I was overcommitted. I was neglecting important things. So, number one goal is to make sure that all the things that I'm spending my time, resources, and passions on actually fit in this container. So, this is where a rule of life really helps me in my personal life. And it really extends to all things. But So I have to limit what I do, how I spend my time, what I spend my resources on, what I spend my passions on. They have to fit in this container because I spend a lot of time with the spilling over. The next phase for me was I thought, okay, if I have to eliminate a bunch of things, I still want all of these things. So maybe if I live more efficiently, I can fit them all in here. And so I would spend a lot of time being efficient with my life and make sure that every minute counted. And so I could jam more things into this container. It all fit, but it fit right up, and it had to go in a certain order. Big things going first and little things around it, so I could fill it all the way to the top. And I had to jam that last little thing in there. That was the efficient approach that I chose for a long time. And I discovered with the efficient approach, and there was no space in the top of the jar, that any little variable, that worked as long as everything went according to plan. If everything went smoothly in my life, I could do everything that I could enjoy everything I put in this container. But the problem is, if you live for any length of time, you understand that life doesn't go according to plan. There are so many variables that change how you live your life. And it changes with life seasons, it changes from day to day. And so one thing I also discovered is efficiency, while important, wasn't the solution. I also had to have space. I had to have margin. So it meant that the container itself, with all my limitations, was a good start, but I also needed to put even less in here so that I had margin for when variables changed in my life. And I had space in there to add something that was urgent, it had space to move things around so that I wouldn't have to neglect anything in my life. Now that's the bottom line. So what did I choose to put in here? What made the cut? And of course you have your most essential things like work. You have to make money if you want to live in a house or have clothing and have food on the table. And especially if you're in a situation where you're caring for other people, if you have kids at home, or if you're the more people that you have responsibility for, you have to obviously have more resources to do that. So you put work in here. If you are married, you put the time you need to, and the passions you need to invest in that marriage relationship. If you have kids at home, you need time and resources to invest in their lives properly and intentionally. So you take what is the essential obligations of your existence, and you put it in here. And what happens oftentimes when you first start doing this is all your essential obligations exceed your container, and that's a problem. And so now you have to choose, how do you reduce your obligations? And you have to. We start. So this is where. Why the movement is so popular today, like tiny house living and simplicity, is a sense of if you could just reduce the amount of obligations you have in your life. If you have less stuff, for instance, you don't need as big a house. If you have a smaller house, you have a smaller mortgage payment. If you have fewer activities or recreational pursuits and that second house, that boat, that whatever it is, again, your financial obligations are reduced. You have reduced debt. You have reduced everything. So that also creates space for you to put in the things that are actually really important that you are trying to choose between, right? So creating space in this container is the things that are once considered essential to your life or normal, you have to start choosing. And this can't happen overnight. It has to happen over time, like debt reduction, for instance. If you've been overcommitted in some areas and so on, it takes time to get out of debt. If you need to sell some things, it takes time to kind of recoup that income so you can create space. That's just one area that I'm talking about, is like finances and our financial obligations. We have to reduce our overhead in order to be able to maybe work less and have a better quality of life as a result. We get overextended. So that's just one example of we have to choose what we put in this container. And the bottom line for me, and that you get the general principle, but what I want to talk about is how it relates to my heart. Why this is so important. Why is this principle so important? We all like the idea of simplicity, less stuff to maintain, fewer things that we are obligated, fewer activities that we're obligated to do, and we like the idea of simplicity, but few of us actually can pull it off. We have a hard time actually living out a simple life and making these choices on a regular basis. And this is really what I want to talk about today. Why? Why can't we do it? Why do I personally struggle with this? Year after year, as I reevaluate this part of my life, why do I struggle with it? And what it comes down to is my heart's attachments. My heart is attached to things, and I have to release those attachments. I have to grieve the loss. I have to transfer my heart's passions and attachments to those most essential, healthy, biblically informed choices and things and pursuits. And this is a work that God has to do in me. And so this, you see how this bleeds back into my spiritual life and my relationships and so on. I have to allow God to do surgical work on my heart to reduce my attachments on things, activities, things that fill up my container. And I think about verses like in Psalm 86, verse 11, where the psalmist says, "Teach me your ways, O Lord. Give me an undivided heart." My problem is my heart is divided. I want to value the most essential things, but my heart also values these other things that is thwarting me from creating space in my container. And I need to release those attachments. I need to grieve them and release them. They're not bad, they're not immoral, they're not unethical things. They're just things that my heart gets attached to that are too much for my container of my life, my limitations. And so I have to release those things. And this is a heart issue. I think about Jesus' words when he says that no one can serve two masters. You can't serve God and wealth or the pursuit of possessions. You have to serve one or the other. So if God is my first love, my priority, I have to release any possession or pursuit of some activity that I also enjoy if that activity is rivaling the most essential things in my life. I have to be able to let that go to create space in my container so I can live a more simplistic life and thus enjoy a more intentional, healthy life. Trying to think of other ideas here from the scriptures. I think of how Paul wrote to Timothy, and he gave them an illustration of a soldier. He says a soldier in active duty does not concern himself with civilian affairs. So these verses and others like them in the scriptures are messages of understanding what are the essential things and focusing your attention on those things as it relates to who God is, the kingdom of God, and the most important people and pursuits in our life. And so I think it's absolutely vital for me, vital is probably too strong a word. I think it's important to me to pursue recreation and rest. It rejuvenates me. It gives me energy so that I can invest in my marriage, in my ministry, in the things that God has called me to more effectively. Well, I can't rest, and I can't enjoy some of those recreational pursuits if my life is so full of other things, so it creates an unhealthy state for me. I have fewer resources to draw from to do the things that are really important. So I have to create space for these things, for resting, for breaking away from the routine so that I can recharge my batteries and I can go charging back in with everything that God has given me to put to those really important activities and people in my life. So the bottom line is, what is my heart attached to? What do I need to release? And that's the hardest part of it. I like the idea of simplicity. I like the idea of creating margin in my life, but what prevents me from doing it is my own heart. And I have to address my attachments in this life and let go of things that are good in favor of the things that are better, are great. The most important, the most essential things in my life, to create this margin, to create space in my container so that I can live. And this is, again, about living intentionally. So simplicity is so important. A couple of books that I'll recommend as I close our time together that address this. A classic work by Richard Foster is called Celebration of Discipline. He has a whole chapter dedicated to simplicity. Secular books. This is a popular subject. So like Stephen Covey's book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. This is where it can lead you down the path of efficiency. I don't think that's the goal or the solution. If I'm just more efficient with my life, I can fit more in my container. But it does have really important principles about how to choose the most important things. And then another book that I read a couple years ago that is all about this subject. It's a book called Essentialism. It's by Greg McKeown. And that's not a Christian book, but for us as believers, we can easily apply the principles of this book through the filter of a biblically informed worldview that we possess as believers. So it falls in line, if you have the right mindset and filters. That's the book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. So this is an important thing. It's our dealing really essentially with our heart. What is our heart attached to, and are we willing to let some good things go in order to make sure that we have all the important things in our life's container that also include margin, so that we can be effective in doing this, and that includes all of life's variables. So Lord bless you today. I hope that was helpful. And I have to sit down and make my lists of things that I include in my container and things that I have to let go. So maybe that's something that you might want to set aside this week time to do. It takes me more than an hour. It takes me several days to really contemplate it. So I hope that was helpful to you, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning.